Hey yo, shout out to my 29 subscribers. I had 30 subscribers yesterday, but I think somebody is getting irritated with the fact that I'm not a big McGregor fan, so they unsubscribed. I would have been happier if they just stayed subscribed and like argued with me or whatever. I'm trying to put some good content out here, but I just want to let you guys know a little bit more about me. I'm a lifelong martial artist. I'm 35 years old. And I started Taekwondo when I was 4. I did Taekwondo from 4 until 14. I wrestled through high school, and I started training mixed martial arts, jiu-jitsu primarily at first when I was 17. So I put in like a solid 6 years of consistent MMA training. I trained about 11 times a week. I had 2 amateur fights. I won both of them by submission. And I even trained in Connecticut at the Lion's Den with Ken Shamrock for a while. I've been around the block a couple of times. I've only had 2 fights, but I've had 10 surgeries related to MMA. I injured myself a lot, and then I got into coaching. There's not a lot of money in coaching. Now I got 3 kids and a mortgage, so I'm trying to hold it down. I'm always out working. But I was in a really bad car accident a year ago, and I almost died. And ever since then, there's a lot of UFC fights that I haven't been able to watch because I'm starting to have a new idea of pain and trauma. So, you know, it's one thing when a guy takes a body shot or he gets choked out or the fight ends by leg kicks or something like that. But when it comes down to dudes just getting cracked in the skull over and over again, guys like Frankie Edgar, guys like Tony Ferguson and Nate Diaz, you know, it's very difficult for me to watch those guys, you know, as the sun sets on their career and just take so much away from them. You know, a guy like Mark Hunt, he said this 10 years ago that he couldn't remember what he had for breakfast anymore. I really give a lot of credit to guys who don't take a lot of damage in their career. Guys like John Jones, Khabib, Conor McGregor, Dominic Cruz, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. These guys are just really, really, really good at not getting hit. I give them all the credit in the world. If I was still an active fighter, that would be the type of fighter that I would need to be. You know, and I started thinking to myself, I'm like, I'm 35 years old. How many more concussions do I really want? You know, I'm way out of shape. I just had a hip surgery. I got to have another hip surgery in October. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, I still want to compete, but I don't know if I want to get my brains beat in. You know, it doesn't take much. I mean, my first fight I took when I was 19. If you type in Mike McDonough and MMA right after and search it on YouTube, it should be the first one that pops up. I fought this guy named John Oth. He was an absolute savage. He hit me, I would say 2 times really hard in the first round. And when I went back to my corner, I was still rocked. And I asked them, I said, hey, how long was I on the ground for? And they said, when? I said, after he hit me, I fell down. They said, no, you didn't. So that one shot right there, and he hit me in the cheekbone, or this side, not even in the jaw, not even in the temple. That one shot alone was enough to distort my memory to the point where I couldn't remember what happened in that round. In my second fight, at the end of the 3rd round, I was gassed out. I thought I was gonna get knocked out. I was getting uppercutted, and I got my teeth punched through my lip, and I took a couple shots to the temple as well. I went around telling everybody I won the fight by triangle choke. I actually won by guillotine. So, I mean, it goes to show you, like, you don't need to get hit that much. You don't need to get knocked out in order to, you know, for it to start affecting your brain. Jake Paul said it already. He said he'll say something to his girlfriend, and like an hour later, he doesn't remember saying it. I mean, that's a good one for you know, to get away with. But I don't think that's, you know, I don't think he's bullshitting. So, you know, when you look at a guy like that who really hasn't taken a lot of damage, a guy like me who barely took any damage, and we're still complaining, you know, that getting hit in the head sucks, I kind of feel like I came up with an alternative. Obviously, when you're at the highest level, you don't want to see compromises in a fight. I mean, it's already a compromise in a UFC fight that there's rounds and you have to wear gloves and you can't knee the guy to the head on the ground. And, you know, it does take away the aspect of making it more like a real fight. But I understand what you have to do for the longevity of these guys and their careers. However, I came up with an idea that could actually help sustain the life of fighters, and would allow other people to compete that are not quite so serious about combat sports competition. Bear with me. How about an MMA league that's bare knuckle? There's no rounds, so it's either a 15-minute fight or a 25-minute fight. And there's no weight cutting. There's, you have to weigh whatever, you're supposed to weigh for the fight, you have to weigh in right before the fight. But here's the crazy part. No head strikes. There are no head strikes allowed whatsoever in this league. So, it's definitely going to change the style of the fight. Obviously, if you don't have to worry about protecting your head and your face so much, you're going to have a lower stance. Your arms are going to be a little bit lower because you're protecting your body a lot more than your head. So I think that this would encourage more grappling in fights. And I think that what you'll find on the ground is that these fighters would be able to grapple at a higher level because there's no gloves. Those gloves really get in the way a lot when you're grappling, and especially when guys can slip their fingers in your glove or grab your glove itself. I think it takes a lot away from a UFC fight or an MMA fight. So if you're on the ground, you can grapple a lot more effectively without having MMA gloves on. Also, you will be able to sneak in strikes that are a lot more painful on the ground because you're bare knuckle. So, when you're looking at a guy, he's took the guy down or he knocked him down, the guy's laying on his back, he's kicking his legs up, and the dude on, standing up in front of him is trying to figure out how to pass his guard or whatever. If he throws these punches towards the leg with those 4-ounce gloves on, you can't generate enough power to a muscly area like that. But if you're bare knuckle and you can punch somebody like right below the kneecap, or sneak a punch into the side of the leg like in a tender area, or you could even attack the foot, and you'd be able to sneak punches in different angles. I actually think you would see a lot of fights just stopped over people getting a very dominant position. So if you're you're going for, let's say you're in someone's half guard and then they kind of start to turtle up, and you get an arm in, you're kind of looking for a guillotine, but you got your their other leg tied up, you almost got them in a cradle position. I don't think with those MMA gloves you can find the openings, or you can create enough damage to start to really put this person away. But if you can sneak in those bare knuckle shots around the arm to the ribs, you can focus on dropping elbows, and you can keep a better grip on them. I just think it's going to bring a lot of different elements to the game. And the coolest part is that cardio is going to matter a lot more in a league like this. If you gas out, the fight's over. You don't have to, try to make it to the end of the round. There's no rounds. So if you're in a 15-minute fight and you're, the type of fighter like, Paulo Costa or Yoel Romero or Conor McGregor, who really, really looks forward to the end of the round so that they can get their cardio back, those guys aren't going to last. Guys like the Diaz brothers, Frankie Edgar, Michael Bisping, Colby Covington, Max Holloway, Alexander Volkanovski, those types of guys, they're going to dominate. They're hardly ever going to lose a fight. So I think it makes it a lot more realistic, and I think it's a lot more watchable for somebody who just doesn't like to see people get hit in the head. And there's two other aspects to it too. If you're coming up in the gym and you're training and you're thinking about taking an amateur fight, you could take a fight in a bare knuckle, no head, no round league, and not have to worry about losing a concussion. Because let's face it, in the UFC game and in boxing and probably football too, you really can only afford to get knocked out like 3 to 5 times before your career is pretty much just done. I mean, think about it. Like, Okay, Frankie Edgar was always known for taking a punch, but he also had really good head movement and stuff like that. But because he never takes a step back, he's always coming forward. A guy like Frankie, you know, started getting caught later on in his career. I believe the first person to ever knock him out was Brian Ortega. And you got to look at how much bigger and younger Brian Ortega was, but still, the elbow and then the uppercut, it was brutal. And that really changed the course of the rest of Frankie's career. He got knocked out by Corey Sandhagen. He got knocked out by Korean Zombie. And I believe he got knocked out 2 more times back to back at the end of his career. So a guy like Frankie, you know, after he gets knocked out like 2 or 3 times, maybe, you know, he doesn't feel like he has anywhere else to go. But you could truly continue to fight for a very long time in a league where you don't have to worry about getting hit in the head. You know, if there's no head strikes, allowed, you know, if you hit somebody in the face or the head by accident, you get a warning. The next time they take a point away, and the next time you're disqualified. I just think it would prolong, you know, the lifespan of guys who still want to compete. Like a good example here is, you know, Tony Ferguson. Tony Ferguson is done, man. I love Tony. I give him nothing but love and respect. He was an incredible fighter. He had his day, 12-fight win streak. The only thing with Tony that I really feel bad about is that he never got to fight Khabib, and he didn't get the title shot that he deserved a little bit earlier than he was supposed to. You know, Conor McGregor coming into the UFC kind of fucked up a lot of things for other fighters. He definitely deserved the Conor McGregor fight. He should have had that. But he took so much damage throughout his career. Tony's a guy I would absolutely love to see fight in a league where there's no head strikes, no rounds. His jiu-jitsu is incredible. He's got underrated wrestling. His cardio is insane. And I would love to see him dominate in a league like that. You know, myself personally, I got 3 kids now. I don't want to get knocked out, man. I don't want to get my brains beat in, because it's not like just the knockout, right? What if you're getting peppered the whole fight, you get rocked like 5 times, you're barely surviving, and then all of a sudden you get knocked out cold, and the ref doesn't get there in time, and you got some monster like Dan Henderson or Masvidal or whoever just giving you 3 or 4 more while you're on. And don't get me wrong, I mean, that's the game. That's what you're supposed to do. But when you got a guy like that, you know, it's almost like you're getting 3 or 4 concussions at once. I mean, it's it's very violent to watch. I'm a fight fan. I love the game. I've been a fighter myself. I've been a coach. You know, I've trained with a lot of really, really good guys. And, you know, I wish there was a league like that around, because maybe you're not fight ready. Maybe you just had surgery and you're not completely recovered from it yet or something, you know, because I've had all these surgeries. Like, hey, you just want to get in there, man. You just want to get in there and fight. I know Eddie Bravo has combat jiu-jitsu, which is really cool. I really, really like combat jiu-jitsu. I think it's really awesome. But it's not quite what I would want to try to do with this other league. I'm not exactly sure what I would call it. My brand is 730, 7VEN, 3IRTY. So maybe 730 MMA or something like that. But I would love to just at least put on one promotion like that. You know, you're going to have a lot of guys that are like 18, 19 years old. They want to fight, but they don't feel like they're ready, and they're kind of terrified. So maybe they would want to fight in a league like that just to get warmed up, to see if it's really what they want to do. Now, I think that that if people can kind of get on board with a new league like this, it would create a lot of opportunities for up-and-comers and for veterans to kind of get back into the game. So I'd like to put on a promotion like this. I mean, think about it. Like, let's say, you know, you're Tony Ferguson, right? Tony Ferguson walks around at like 190 pounds, and he's lean. He has to get down to 180 just to begin a 25-pound weight cut to 155. and he's been knocked out way too many times. He's taken way too much damage. That fight with Gaithje was brutal, and that fight with Chandler was brutal. Oliveria and Darush, you know, not quite as bad. But let's say you're Tony Ferguson. You don't want to cut weight anymore, right? Even at 170, you're still cutting weight. So let's say Tony Ferguson at 185 pounds. Let's take somebody else that is retired from MMA and just doesn't want to take head strikes anymore. Let's say Robbie Lawler, okay? Robbie Lawler versus Tony Ferguson at 185 pounds. So there's pretty much no weight cut there. I mean, Robbie might have to cut a little bit. Robbie versus Tony, 185. Main event, 5 rounds. Well, there's no rounds, but it would be, you know, 25 minutes and no head strikes. That's a crazy fight, man. That's a really, really crazy fight. I mean, that's something I would definitely want to see. And I think it would create a lot of different kind of tricky techniques that you don't see in MMA right now. And I think it would just be really, really cool for guys to continue to compete. Like me personally, I just think it'd be a lot of fun. Without those gloves, you can sneak in a lot of punches, elbows, knees, kicks, and stuff like that. And I just think it's probably not something people are going to want to get on board with. But I don't know, maybe I should talk to Eddie Bravo about it. So no head strikes, no weight cutting, no rounds. One of my buddies, shout out to my boy Nate, one of my very best friends either, he's my brother in fact, we were talking about it and he said, man, I'd rather take a concussion than a bunch of broken ribs. I said, yeah, if you're only planning on fighting once in your career, I kind of agree with you. I'd rather get knocked out one time, you know, and be okay to go home with my family later that night instead of having 3 or 4 broken ribs, you know, and that shit takes at least 2 months to heal before you can even really walk around the way you want to. However, a broken rib is going to heal. In fact, it might heal even stronger than before. A broken leg, a broken arm, torn ligaments, you can do a lot of rehab or whatever. But when you get knocked out, that's it. You can't get that back. You can't ever completely recover from a concussion. Talk to anybody who's ever been knocked out more than a couple of times. You know, my father-in-law is a really good guy, but military veteran. He's been in car accidents. He was a CO for a long time. Dude's been knocked out like 5 times. He's not quite the same guy as he used to be. So, you know, if it's me, if I'm a UFC fighter and I'm at the top of my game, but I suffer 3 really bad knockouts, well, then it's time. You know, it's definitely time to try something else. So I know Dana White's not going to go for it. I know that, you know, a lot of these people aren't going to go for it, but I really would like to see it. You know, you saw the way Tony Ferguson was fighting Nate Diaz. He was just absolutely terrified to get hit, and Nate doesn't even hit that hard. But I don't blame Tony. But he probably feels like there's nothing else he can do. Look at a guy like Chuck Liddell. Chuck Liddell's crazy, man. He still wants to compete, but he can't be getting hit in the head anymore. It's insane. Tito Ortiz as well, too, man. He should, you know, save some brain cells. But I think you're going to see higher levels of grappling, a lot more creative techniques, and then you're going to see something really, really cool when people aren't cutting weight and when they can actually, you know, take away the breaks in between the rounds. If you took away breaks in between rounds, I don't think guys like, you know, Tony Ferguson, Max Holloway, the Diaz brothers, Frankie, Edgar, I don't think any of these guys would ever lose fights, ever. It would just be impossible. Honestly, if there were no rounds in fighting, I think Nick Diaz actually would have beat George St. Pierre. Crazy. Let me know what you guys think.